everyone. Welcome to the Power Hour. Thanks for joining me. I'm your host, Eugene Schatzman. This is optometry's largest and longest running show, and we've got a phenomenal guest for you today. So today's show is about driving revenue per patient, and we're going to attack it in a completely non-obvious way. Because usually when I hear other speakers, or even when I teach or train on revenue per patient, I'm talking about capture rates, exam onlys, optical handoffs, multiple pair promos, you name it. But today, my guest, Dr. Todd Cohan, brings you a completely different perspective. He has built a successful practice with an unusually high revenue per patient, and he doesn't do it by selling super high-end frames and lenses. Now, you're going to find those in his optical, but as he mentions during the show, he only does 33% of his revenue in the optical. So what about the rest? First, he's going to tell you about his very unique pretest process. And forget your $39 imaging fee. My mind was blown with what he collects out of pocket before he even sees the patient. Then we go through his whole process for converting comprehensive exams into other revenue generating activity like dry eye, myopia management, think those types of things. So Todd also has unusually high acceptance rates for out-of-pocket elective procedures. And I'm super lucky that he's a client because he is very patient and very generous as he walks through the many parts of his process so that you can benefit, borrow, and apply. And you're definitely going to enjoy some of his one-liners and analogies. Anyway, this is a great show with a great guest, and it's completely based on your feedback because last time I did a dry eye show, people reached out to me with questions and alternative perspectives. And so part of the conversation today is about driving high acceptance rates for elective procedures. But as you listen, I absolutely encourage you to reach out to me with feedback. You can find me on the Power Hour website or at eugeneschatzman.com. I definitely want to hear what you get out of today's conversation, or just reach out with questions, feedback, or if you'd just like to connect. I'm here as a resource for you. And again, you can reach out at eugeneschatzman.com. And with that in mind, let's jump into today's show. All right, Dr. Todd Cohan, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Eugene. It's my pleasure to be here. And like I say, first time caller, long time listener.
Well, appreciate having you on the show. And I'm going to tell everybody what our topic is, which is going to sound a little bit paradoxical, which is economy proofing your business by maximizing revenue per patient. And I'll give a tiny bit of background so that everybody understands how this idea came along. We were at an event together, and I think I was on stage, and I was talking about some trends that are happening in the marketplace today. And one of the things we're seeing as a response of patients feeling like, inflation is hitting their pocketbooks this year, patients are spending less money or patients are spending less time and are typing into Google fewer times things about luxury eyewear brands. And they're typing into Google more times things about, affordable eyewear type of searches, which, this is just fact. This isn't, it's a fact that happens. And this is, we track demand across every region, every zip code and coast to coast. And when we track demand, all we're doing is saying, how often does somebody type something into Google? And then we categorize the hundreds of thousands of keywords that we track. So one of the interesting things that we saw last year is luxury brands went up. And then one of the interesting things we saw this year is that luxury brands took a dip a little bit over the summer. And while they're still a little bit higher than last year, it doesn't seem like, the consumer is as luxury motivated anymore. And so after I was done speaking and talking about some of these trends, one of the conversations you and I had, Todd, is, hey, there are ways when you have uncertain times in the economy, there are ways to economy proof your business. And you, and I know this because you're a client, is that you've got a very impressive revenue per patient. You've got this, you're kind of teetering on this 4-figure revenue per patient. And most of it isn't coming from selling really high-end glasses in your optical. So one of the things that I thought would be good for people to hear is your approach, because your approach doesn't just work in your practice. You recently acquired a practice and you were able to grow their revenue per patient by 50%. And so I was just, I wanted to position this for our audience here so that, when we talk about economy proofing your business by maximizing revenue per patient, I want people to hear about how you do that. And so let's start at the basics. Your primary focus on when you try to drive revenue per patient in your practice, where do you start?
Well, I look at vision plans as the two main vision plans we take as a marketing expense. It drives people in the door. Yes, we're at the Facebook moms groups, and yes, we get lots of referrals and have some aggressive, nice thanking our patients for referring other patients. But the way I look at it is these patients are being driven in by a lot of the vision plans, and we all kind of face that. It's the necessary beast for those, except for those practices that already have a big following and kind of abandon those. But the way I look at it is, how can I take this $65 per reimbursement on average, or whatever, wherever you live in the country is different, and boost it up just by doing the right services. And so I've always positioned myself that I want to have the latest technology, and we all say that, but do we all follow that? Do we all make it instituting? I mean, the fact of the matter is a lot of practices have, A to Z equipment, but it's collecting dust or it's a coat hanger, and they're not implementing it. So you have to have scripting with your staff. You have to have the method of why your staff believes in the quality of care you're bringing and elevating the patient's experience in their comprehensive eye exam. Let's just talk about primary eye care right now. So in my practice, we're over 95% of our patients get photos, retinal photos, and about 90% of our patients over 40 get visual fields, get OCT, retinal scan, glaucoma, screener. They get a macular pigment density, looking for early signs or risk factors for macular degeneration. And we also do myopography in every patient. Every patient, whether you're 6 or 66, gets myopography. We'll go into that later about dry eye, but that's where I start. And those tests not only create a higher dollar capture rate for our revenue per patient, and that starts there, but it's also like a farm system for our medical practice. And so if we find something in an OCT screening or a glaucoma screening or whatever the case may be, I will then schedule you appropriately for follow-ups. And those follow-ups will then come, at the same time a comprehensive eye exam's coming in 3 months, that follow-up will be with me. And so that, again, is building your collective hourly revenue per OD.
Okay, so let's go back one more time, because we're just going to start at the beginning of the journey. Patient walks into your practice, that they're going to go through pre-testing. And in that pre-testing, how much are they going to pay?
So if you're a 40-year-old or over, it's about $150 out of pocket for all 4 of those tests.
And what's your acceptance rate on that?
Oh, for 40-year-olds and over, we're about 88%.
Okay,
But
so
anybody, but if you're, less than 40, depending upon whatever. So, everyone's getting photos and they're paying like $45, and except for those vision plans, they're supposed to pay $39, whatever. But
okay, so let's just start there. So you've got 88% compliance on a patient paying you $150 before you even see them in the chair. So
yeah.
talk to me about how you do that.
Okay, so we have scripting the staff. All the staff is capable to do all the testing. And so, but what I really firmly believe in, Eugene, is when the patient sits down, it really affirms, just like people have really aggressive pre-appointing and patients have become positioned and accustomed to be pre-appointed. The same thing happens with medical testing in our practice. So say you're the patient, you come in, hey, Eugene, how's your kids doing? Yada, yada, yada. How was that trip to Mexico you went on last year? And then I'll say, I'm going to go over all the testing we did with you today. This is your retinal image. This is picking up early signs of high blood pressure, diabetes. We can see the part of your brain here. This is the OCT. It looks at 80,000 images a second of the back of your eye. We can see early signs for glaucoma up to 7 years earlier, early macular degeneration, pictures we cannot see with the photos, we can see below the surface. This is your macular pigment score is this number. This is a risk factor along with other risk factors. We can measure it. And if it's low, we can talk about eye vitamins. This is your visual field. It can catch early neurological issues. I'll usually use the example of a 38-year-old that I caught with a pituitary tumor 6 months ago. So it kind of like reaffirms and gets rid of the buyer's remorse and really emphasizes the fact that, hey, I've been seeing in the North Shore of Chicago a lot, and my mother-in-law was guilty of this before I became an optometrist. They're conditioned to see ophthalmologists. They think ophthalmologists are the top of the pyramid. Well, every single patient, I've never had a patient come in who used to come from ophthalmologists and say, wow, I've never had an eye exam like this. Every single patient from an ophthalmologist says that because of our thoroughness, but it also on the back end, it builds our practice. It decommoditizes our practice because I'm proud to say that 66% of our revenue on an annual basis is non-optical. And so from myopia management to dry eye to medical care to A to Z, that's what's driving our revenue and increasing us every year in our practice.
And we're going to come back to that in a moment, but I'm still fascinated by, a new patient walks in the door, and I totally agree with you. I think it's fantastic to get rid of the buyer's remorse when you're sitting in clinic, but new patient walks in the door and you have to deliver the news that before they even look in the optical, because they're coming in for glasses and maybe
Right.
contact lenses and an eye exam, and you haven't decommoditized the eye exam. But as far as you know, they could have, their idea of what an eye exam is based off of what they got at Costco last year.
Sure.
So let's talk about what you say to those patients at the front desk to get the $150 for them to at least say, okay, yeah, that seems fine.
Okay, so our call center, when they are calling for new appointments, they do start by saying, just your out of pocket costs are going to be $45 for the retinal screening, in addition to your exam copays. And then when the patients hear our technicians are fantastic in terms of
Hmm.
their verbiage, in terms of kind of being excited about the technology that we have. And so then they'll say, hey, Eugene, you're over 40. We really the doctors strongly recommend this. And because of ABC, why we want to be catching those problems before they become a bigger problem.
Love that. That's great. Because
Mhm.
I mean, there's too many times where patients walk into the practice and, the techs are head pushers, right? And the head pushing goes something like, okay, now look at the green dot over here, and now look at the little house over there, and like now do this and this over there. And there's not really much value being delivered. And that's such a opportune time to really talk up the, hey, this is a state of the art piece of technology. This is a state of the art piece of technology. And like you said, decommoditize the office. So, I mean, training the techs to be able to do that. What's it take? How long did it take you to get your techs to become excellent at that? And also in your new practice that you just
Yeah.
bought, where I know you put some technology. How long
Mhm.
did it take until the techs changed their behavior and you could collect $150 per before
Um,
before they even sat down in the chair?
Well, with the new established practice, I should say, I kind of came in and saying, this is the new technology. We got excited about this is a level of care we're able to provide, such higher level care. And we had the technicians be the patient to show them all the cool stuff we're able to see. And they were
Oh, I
like,
love that.
wow, this is so cool. Dr. Smith's been doing this for 36 years and we've never seen anything more than just a picture of the eye. And so we got them excited, but it took, a couple of weeks. But when I always have an implementation plan, Eugene, when I buy a new piece of equipment, right? Whether it's a new handheld tonometer or whether it's a new camera or something, because that's the problem most people do when they're talked into, especially this time of year, whenever this podcast comes out. But we're in November right now, and the reps are coming knocking, saying, use your tax write off, use your whatever," and they just want to sell the box. They don't really care about the implementation, and that's the
Hmm.
problem. But I presented at a national conference last year, another group I'm in, and I had all my staff members in my PowerPoint actually recorded their audio when it came to the scripting, and everyone's like, the room was packed. I mean, they couldn't believe it. But I'm like, this is what you should be doing. It's nothing new to me. But when you have the scripting and the repeatability, they all say about the gist of the same thing. And I have them all walk through it. Even our new hires, they go through the whole process. Then they have to shadow for a while. Then they have a technician buddy, and then they get all the verbiage kind of through osmosis.
I love that. That's
Yeah.
that's so that's fantastic. So now we're in the chair, right? Like now we're in your and you're talking about, so as you mentioned, you've gone through, and when you're presenting the test, you're not just talking about here's what we saw. You're talking about here's what we could have seen, or here's what we checked
Correct.
for, and here's what we screened for. And
Correct.
you gave me a little bit of that verbiage already. Are there any specific tips and tricks that you want to share with the audience about, what's worked in the past and what hasn't?
Sure. So, I mean, what's worked in the past, I mean, I always say too that like it's very important just to get a second monitor next to the exam room chair, kind of for the
Yeah.
effect. So that way you're not clicking in and out of your EHR and things like that. But so that's really impressive to kind of see their picture blown up and the images blown up.
And
But
by the
what
way, a second monitor is like a really nice, I don't know, like a 32-inch monitor is like $250.
Yeah, Black Friday probably $150, right? But yeah, so that's worked. But what hasn't worked in the past is when we have got a new piece of equipment and the staff didn't really know the why behind it as well. There was something we tried out for a while, and it's very easy there's so much cool technology out there. I mean, there's a new ERG thing I'm looking at. There's the NeuroLens thing that's out. There's so many things, but how much time do you have in your exam room to focus on each little subsector of those pieces of technology before the patient's head is spinning like a slot machine, not knowing which way is up? And so I'd like to be a master of few versus a master, a little dabbler of many. And it's really hard. And so we tried it out and it just wasn't working. And I returned it after a couple months because it's just hard. I mean, one of my buddies in my other study group, we've been together 15 years. He goes, look, he's like, I have a specialty contact lens practice. I have dry eye. I cannot waste 7 minutes about talking about lutein eye vitamins. I'm only making $8 a bottle on, right?
Yeah,
You
right.
just can't. Your time is limited with the patients without them feeling rushed and to get that good experience. And so it really is important to figure out the why behind what you're doing and the proper implementation steps, because I have 4 providers, 4 associates plus myself. And so we have doctor meetings every 2 months. We talk about conversion rates and optical conversion and pre-testing and medical testing. We try our best to disseminate the information across all of us so the patient has the same experience. Is it going to be the same? Of course not. But if I can get there to the 90% approach, that would be great across the doctors.
Yeah, we're going to come back to the doctors in a little bit,
Yeah.
and it still sounds like more than most people do when you're going through all of the imaging. So, how long are your exams, and how long are you taking? And I mean, it sounds like you're doing this consistently across
Yeah.
you and
So our
all of the
pre-testing,
docs in the
we
practice.
always time it, right? So pre-testing, if you're going to be a 40-year-old and getting all 4, the gauntlet as we call it, it's about 16 minutes, 17 minutes or
Yep.
so, right? But I've invested in. We found that with all our ortho K patients, we were using the same device that does the myography and topography, and so I
Hmm.
actually bought a second one, and actually bought a second retinal camera, because I didn't want to have it was clogging up, right? And we were running behind, and patients were waiting, and these kids coming in for ortho K checks, we do topography and refraction and see them back, and that room was being tied up. So I spent the money to double those machines, and it's worked out well, because of the bottleneck. But it's about 16 to 17 minutes for an adult. For a person like a less than 18-year-old that's getting photos, and if you're driving, we really encourage the visual fields, and we do myography. That's like not even 10 minutes. I mean, they're in and out of there. So.
Okay. So then, so that's 16 minutes, and then how long is the exam itself when you're sitting
Well,
there
we
talking to
book patients in 30-minute slots, but you got to remember that we're doing a lot of things concurrently, right? I'm doing a myopia management check. I'm doing a red eye check. I'm doing, all these dry eye follow-ups on the like 2 or 3 of those an hour. So, we'll do like 3 comp exams an hour, basically, or if it's if it's a mom and 2 kids, it's easily in 35, 45 minutes, all 3 of them. But, they're in the process together. And so people really don't wait. I mean, we keep a stack of Starbucks gift cards in our front office area for the staff. And if we're running more than 5 to 7 minutes behind, we'll give you a Starbucks card without even asking for it.
Oh,
Because
that's brilliant. That's
I'm
brilliant.
very type A. Like I'm the guy at the airport. I'm like, I'm going TSA. I'm at Disney. I'm finding the shortest line. I
Right. Yeah.
hate
Right.
waiting. My wife is like, I went to the dentist. I sat there for 45 minutes. I'm like, that's not okay. My time is
No,
more valuable. But people are used to waiting. But I'm just very type A when it comes to that stuff. And if I'm running 5 or 7 minutes behind, I'm like, come on, we gotta get going. So,
that's, by the way,
things
a great
happen.
idea.
Yeah.
How much are those Starbucks gift cards?
$5. So we keep a stack. I
Yeah.
keep my $50 worth of Starbucks cards. To be honest with you, maybe we go through them 2.5 months. So we're not running
Got it.
behind that much. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, so you're in the chair. You're finding stuff. You're using this information to opportunity mine. So let's talk about the opportunities that you tend to find with patients, and specifically the ones that are going to help you drive revenue per patient.
Yes. So, well, I mean, first and foremost, if you're catching something if you don't have an OCT, get one yesterday. You can catch epiretinal membrane so easy. See them back in 6 months or 3 months. To have more advanced visual field testing. All those types of things. So that's an easy one. Or if you find any little exudates or leakage in the retina, any deposits, see them back in 6 months. I mean, glaucoma, so on and so forth. We all know that certain protocols we're supposed to follow. But the main thing that really drives a lot of revenue is doing myography and all our pre-testing. And we've
Mhm.
encouraged that we do it on every single contact lens wearer. bar none. And we start the process. Even if we have a 7-year-old, we do myopography. We try to be as consistent as we can, because it starts the conversation about digital device use with the parents, which then bleeds
Hmm.
into myopia, right? Or, when your little kid gets a sty all the time, well, the reason why they're getting a sty is because meibomian gland dysfunction. The oil is stagnant, it gets infected, the glands aren't producing the oil, it's not flowing. It's like a backup in the hose there. So those types of things is really like your, like you said, the mining, or I kind of call it the farm system, where it
Hmm.
really generates further testing and further exams. And so if, I don't want to overwhelm the patient, their comprehensive eye exam, but we'll definitely touch on it and say, oh, your glands, are really, and I have the patient self-grade their glands and say, what do you think? And so at the end of the exam, I'll do the handoff. I'll take them to the optical. I'll say, before we do we talked about our things we're prescribing, and we're working on the verbiage to increase our patient capture rate, but in the optical, but the first thing they do is they sit them down at the laptop and dispensing, and they set up the ocular surface exam. So they set up that quote unquote dry eye exam, but we don't call it dry eye because people say, I don't have dry eye, right? It's the ocular surface exam that we set up for a half-hour appointment, and they'll do more further testing. They're told ahead of time there'll be some out-of-pocket costs with that. The medical insurance will cover some, and there's some out-of-pocket costs, and we'll schedule that before they even pick out their eyewear or purchase
Okay,
their.
hold on. We just so much here. This
All
is,
right.
so
Right.
first of all, I heard you say you have them grade their myography.
Yes.
Talk about that.
All right, so any device you get, I mean, you can just Google, like, my biography images and things. There's the picture of what it's supposed to look like. There's a moderate and there's a severe
Hmm.
loss. And so patients are kind of funny. They always think things are worse than they are. And so the picture says 1,000 words. It really hits home. I use a lot of analogies. These are like the piano keys. They should be long piano keys. When you leave the cap of your toothpaste off, it's kind of crusty. The rest of the toothpaste is ruined. Well, that's what's happening in your glands. They start getting brittle, they break apart, they fall apart. Other doctors may have said warm compresses. Well, a warm compress is only like holding a match to a candle far away. It'll soften it, but it won't melt it. And so the good thing is, the great news, we have some great solutions for you. We'll talk more about those at the ocular surface exam. And so the patient say, where do you think you lie between this picture, that picture, that picture? And they always 9 out of 10 times say between 2 and 3. I might say they're 2. But when it comes, I mean, this is just globally. I mean, we've had patients that, as an aside, their glands look great, but they function like terribly, and we're catching them early. And behind the microscope, they're not functioning. So it's function and form. But for the most part, we'll just start the picture for simplicity's sake.
So you show them the picture and you say, this is what a healthy one's supposed to look
Yep.
like. This is what yours looks like. How bad do you think yours is? This is brilliant, Todd, because honestly, it gets them the commitment. As a marketing consumer psychology buff, like, I'm thinking you're building the commitment from them. They're the ones who are telling you this is a problem, not you.
Right. And like roughly just under half of our patients that we've done ocular surface exams and treatments in the office are completely asymptomatic. Right. So it's just like the patient, might have eye pressure of 34. They're not telling us my eye pressure is high. They're not going to feel it necessarily, but we're catching it. We're promoting eye drops. We're having follow-ups. We're scheduling more testing. So it's no different. Meibomian gland dysfunction, which is 86% of dry eye disease, is no different than glaucoma. You're catching it early before people become symptomatic.
Yeah. So in that particular environment, so you get them to grade their
Glades.
myography.
Mhm.
What else happens? So I heard you say, and we have some great solutions. You're going to have an ocular surface exam. Now, let's talk about what percentage of your patients take you up on that ocular surface exam when you find something.
Oh, well over 80%. They're booking it right there.
Okay. So just make sure I want the audience to hear this, to understand the power of this. So you're doing a biography on every patient. What
Yep.
percentage of patients end up needing some sort of, let's say, end up needing an ocular surface exam?
Of all the patients we see.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm obviously over a certain age group, right? So,
Yeah, of
because
course.
we're not going to schedule an ocular surface exam for a
Yeah,
14
right. No,
year
and
old. But I mean,
yeah.
let's say all adults, right? I mean, so of all the my biographies to do, I would probably say that, I mean, MGD is like so common, right? It's the easiest thing. You don't even have to externally market it. It's sitting dormant in your practice right now. So
Mhm.
I would say, at least 60 to 70% of those patients will end up
Okay.
coming in for an ocular
So
surface exam.
So 60 to 70% of your adult patients are going to walk back in for an ocular surface exam. Just
Yeah,
think
that's the
about how
intention.
powerful that is for a practice. If we're just thinking about revenue per patient, and I talk to practices all the time, and they think about all the different levers they can pull. I just want to pause and recognize how powerful this lever is. If you're able to get a patient to commit to coming in for an ocular surface exam, all of a sudden, what's your revenue at an ocular surface exam before you've sold them dry eye treatment?
Before I've sold them any products or no?
Yes, before you sold them anything, right? They're just literally,
Okay.
what do
So
you charge for the exam?
we're billing the exam like a 99214 plus external photos plus inflammatories, and then I'm charging them like we do a comprehensive dry eye report that's $100 out of pocket. So you could just say by the medical fees only, what we obviously they're deductible, all that kind of stuff. So you could say on average you're collecting $230. Maybe after insurance 180. I don't know, somewhere around there,
Yeah, on
180 or
on
200.
60% of your patients who are
Yeah.
comprehensive exams.
Right. And that's before you sell them eye drops or vitamins or products. And then from those patients that have ocular surface exams, then they'll come back. It depends. We have this whole patent, this flow charts are, but they'll come back for the treatments. And then so we start the treatments, and then obviously the sky's the limit. But I do want to impress upon the audience here, Eugene, is that one of our ophthalmologists that is huge in terms of they do 70% of their IOLs or premium IOLs, which is unheard of. The national average is like 12 to 15%.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
So
Hmm.
basically and I've modeled my practice to how their sales process works. And what he does and his ophthalmologists do is they leave, exit stage left. What was that from a cartoon? Exit stage left, right? So we talk about what I'm prescribing for you, Eugene, and then say, okay, I'm going to have my patient education coordinator. We're going to take you to our dry eye suite, which is a really nice 400 square feet in our office with the spa chair and all that kind of stuff. And I say, we're going to go in there, and then so-and-so is going to come and talk to you about the different treatments. Our staff our patient education coordinators are all well versed on. I hardly ever talk price with patients, hardly ever, unless they're a longtime patient. I'll go into it, but and I have my spiel. But our office staff, all three of the patient education coordinators, have the same exact way to respond to patients when number one question, what is it? Is it
How
covered by my
much?
insurance, right?
Yep,
So they
yep.
have ways to say and talk about that, and we give historical data about they didn't cover mammograms for 30 years either, and the insurance isn't always in our best interest when it comes to being proactive and things, and so we have the whole spiel. And so then the patient education coordinators will sign them up. So our staff doctors do not talk about price, because let that be explained to them, and then they can talk about payment options and so forth with the
Well, then
patient.
it's easier to control what because I'm sure you could do it, but it's easier to control what your associates do, because your associates aren't really going to want to talk about price. They didn't get into medicine to become salespeople, and they certainly didn't come to work for you to be salespeople. So it's actually a pretty wise move to have your patient coordinators trained on a sales process.
Right.
So I'm going to follow the train on the dry eye side, and then I'm going to maybe come back and talk about some of the other things. But um, okay, so we've got a whole bunch of patients coming in for an ocular surface exam.
Right.
Talk to me about that. So what is that like in your practice? Because you got to give them some value for the $235 that they
Mm,
came in for,
yeah.
and then also, what are the solutions that you guys are presenting for them?
Okay. So we'll say, okay, the staff technician will take them back. We'll do upper and lower myopography. Where in the screening, we used to do lower. We'll do the
Hmm.
non-invasive tear breakup time. We'll do the oil layer. The Oculus Keratograph does a whole assay of tests. In our other location, we have the tear check that does a whole assay of tests. And then they'll do the inflammatory, looking for inflammation, and the non-invasive tear breakup time, look at the quality. So our staff is explaining all these as they're doing them. And then they'll go in the exam room. We'll do a comprehensive slit lamp exam. We'll go over the results, talk about the inflammation, talk about how dry eye is actually called dry eye disease because it gets worse if you don't do something about it. They can affect your vision. You kind of ask the patient, oh, is your vision kind of blurry in the morning or evenings? Yeah, it kind of is. Oh, that's dry eye. And did you know that like 75% of how we see isn't the lens in our eye, it's the ocular surface. And so if there's little spots on the window, you're not going to see as well. And so then we'll go into that and we'll talk about the importance of nutraceuticals, whether it's an omega-6 or omega-3s products. We'll talk about different eye drops we prescribe and recommend. And so typically they come back in 3 weeks, and then we'll remeasure their inflammation, check how things are going. And at that time, we'll either schedule them for treatments and talk about, our IRPL, LipiFlow, BlephX, radio frequency. Sometimes, like this patient drove an hour away and she actually needed 2 amniotic membranes. So we did 1 amniotic. I'm like, I'm not touching you until we get your ocular surface better, because I don't want to do any treatments until we kind of make your eyes a lot less inflamed. And so we did one, and 3 days later, I did another one. But this is a brand new patient. I texted her, checked in with her, and she actually brought her husband for the follow-up. She goes, I just had to have my husband meet you. Your communication's amazing. I feel so confident in your care. And so it's that extra level of caring that really makes your practice,
I
move
love that.
forward. And I'm sure this lady's going to be a broadcaster of our practice one day. So
So I love that. But so you're saying you start with products for, typically your protocols, you start with products for a few weeks
well,
and then you
typically,
bring
if
them
they
back.
have like inflammation, we're going to do a
Mhm.
short course of steroids. And so in that case, you have to see them back 3 weeks afterwards. Well, at least that's our protocol, to check their eye pressure, check the inflammation, and kind of educate them on that. So that's the reason why. I've had some colleagues of mine across the country, if there's, I don't want to do anything. It's okay. Here's some warm compresses and blood scrubs. Come back and see me in 4 months. Come back in 4 months. Hey, Eugene, how are those working out for you? Okay, we tried your way. Now let's try mine, right? So
I
I'm
love that.
concerned about your eyes. Let's take a more proactive approach and get this problem fixed.
Yeah, I love that. So let's talk about and actually one question I didn't ask is, so you tend to present a treatment plan for every patient
Yes.
after you're doing your battery of tests,
Yeah, and
and
everyone's
you talk
unique. I mean,
about.
for the most part, most people get most of them, but not everybody. Obviously, there's different factors, right? So,
So what percentage of patients end up doing something?
I would say that I would say about 65 to 70% of people are scheduling their treatments at the conclusion or at the 3 week follow up. Now,
Mhm.
there's lots of different varying factors. I want to wait till my HSA restarts. I want to wait. I'm going on vacation in the summertime, and then you're in the Midwest also. People want to make sure they're golfing every single day they can. So
Mhm.
what we've like our fall and early spring are backloaded with treatments because people postpone them to the when it's not as sunny out. So there's lots of different issues and things, but I do have a protocol, and we use a couple digital marketing solutions that really help reactivate those patients. So in our system, it shows that how many people had an ocular surface exam and never followed up with treatment or never scheduled up. It's called like kind of follow up with those people to kind of
Yeah,
reactivate. We have to think
sure.
of our practices. I'm a business owner first and then an optometrist second, right? And so you have to really look at your practice in terms of how to, as a sales process, as much as we don't want to say it, but that's what you're recommending. This is what you've invested in technology in your practice in. And to be honest, this is raising your level of comprehensive care and your relative per patient value. Like I always say, our patient revenue per patient is the sum of our quality of care we're giving. And that's what I've always conveyed to my associates, because I don't want, like this new associate I have for my new practice that I acquired. She came from a retail location. She's never done a drop of medical in her life. I had her shadow me and my other associates for a full month. I paid her for a full month because I want her to get on the same train that we all are on. And now she's
Mm.
super comfortable. She's doing IPL treatments in my second office. She's doing LipiFlows. It's fantastic. So to say it can't be done is a falsehood. So
Well, and that's actually a really interesting point, is that it seems to me, and I've heard this pattern throughout some of the things that you've described, is that you invest a lot of time and energy into making sure that your staff and your associates are educated. I want you to talk a little bit more about that and how you verify. I imagine that you teach someone something and then, 90 days later, they forget that you taught them this. I've seen this in my business. I've seen this in my clients'
yeah,
business, is that there's always a need to kind of double check, re-verify, and remind people that this is in fact what they're doing. What we found and different jobs are different, right? So what we found, for example, in the call center, I actually have data on this, is that if you don't remind a call center employee every 2 to 2.5 weeks of exactly what the expectations are, they start losing some of the habits. And so we in our call center try to remind people every day. And if that's not possible, then every 2 days, because we're like, we don't want you to get that 2.5 weeks and, kind of just drop one of the, if we're asking you to do 10 things, then, you get to 9 at 2.5 weeks. And then I'm sure in other positions, there's this kind of unwritten business rule of 90 days is when you really need a hard reset to remind yourself what the expectations of whatever you're doing are, whether you're a business owner or an optometrist or a practice manager. And so, how do you do that if you're investing in education for your associates, for your team members, for your techs? What are some of the best practices you found?
I mean, I take my staff, all my associates out to dinner every 2 months, not just to sit down and have drinks with them, but we actually go through our revenue per patients, our individual metrics, right? So like rising tides raise all ships. So like, my revenue per patient is always going to be the highest. I don't know one owner out there that isn't the highest compared to their associates. It's getting pretty close, but and what we say is like, look, Doctor So and So, you saw 200 exams in this last 2 months, for example. Let's see, how many ocular surface exams did you generate from that? Why wasn't the percentage there? Because we can easily track that and say, let's talk about, hey, and they like to learn from each other. Hey, Emily, what do you tell your patients to get the ocular surface exam? Hey, what do you do? And they group text all the time and things without, we're the force, we have our group text, but that's really important to hear from each other because they like to be in a team environment and help each other out, even though they're on their individual islands of their days of their practice of the week. When it comes to the technicians, same type of thing. We've gotten a lot of feedback. We brought the virtual visual field into our new practice, and people love that. And we got a lot of feedback from the staff. But you're right; it needs constant reminding. And my operations manager is phenomenal about setting, weekly, biweekly, monthly goals. And the staff at our staff meetings have understand the reason behind that. It's not for the revenue number at the bottom. It's about the quality of care and making us unique. And I think subliminally, I think they understand that's their job security, right? Because we're not at a 5 a dime optical, just turning and burning glasses all day long. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody benefits, including your patients, when you decommoditize your practice. And certainly, no better way to do that than by providing a really high level of care. And for the patient, this is where I think you guys do something special that most practices really struggle with, which is that you're able to explain what you're doing in a way that makes a lot of sense to the patient. So, I've heard you even just in this short conversation, and certainly others that we've had since you're a client. I've heard some of these things, even when you were telling my team during your onboarding how you do certain things. I found some of your analogies quite fascinating, and I'm curious: do your associates, like, do they steal your analogies? Do you tell them what your analogies? Do you, like,
oh, of
there's like a
course,
script that you hand to people, and you say these are Todd's, 25 top 25 analogies? How do you do it?
they've heard it enough. They've all heard it enough because they all shadow. I mean, they've all shadowed me back when they started, and we talk about things, and we just reemphasize it at our doctors' meetings too. The power of prescribing and strong recommendations is humongous. It's really, really great, and not to be crass, but I'm like, if a patient doesn't experience that stuff, doesn't appreciate that stuff in my practice, there's plenty of places down the street that they're happy to go, and we're happy to say that because we're trying to bring in this technology to raise the level of quality of care. And there's some patients that are adamant, I don't want to do photos. Okay, then you know what? I'm sorry. There's other practices. You're not allowing us to practice at the highest level and catch eye diseases. And I kind of joke with patients, I don't care about your prescription. I can easily fix your prescription. I can't fix a hole in your retina, right? So we want to catch things early. And so those may not be the practice for us. And, when you're young and you're starting off, or you're a new practitioner or a new practice, you want to every butt in the chair is important, which is true to some extent. But you can easily raise your prices, get rid of a third of your patients, and have the same or greater revenue. And we've always had that. I mean, our practice is not, all of our medical exams obviously add to our bottom line majorly in all our treatments, but we do anywhere in our main practice, anywhere from 2,300 to 2,600 comp exams a year, which isn't a lot, but what we're doing with those exams and the conversion is how I much rather practice, right?
Yeah, and it's very impressive what you're doing in terms of revenue per patient on
Mhm.
those. So going back to kind of some of our original discussions, okay, so one area where it seems like you really drive revenue per patient is your dry eye, which obviously is fed by all of the high quality imaging that you do up front and then the value conversation you have with the patient around that. Now, let's talk about the other side of the equation, which is, kids. So you've got, I think you call it an ortho K practice, and I think what we're finding is that patients are actually calling it myopia management more often than they're calling it ortho K today. I think that we're seeing a pretty sizable bump in demand around myopia management, and I'm curious what you've learned as you've added this to your practice, and what's working for you.
Okay, so I really found you have to really say myopia is a disease. I tell patients to Google myopia epidemic, and I talk about how screen time, kids aren't playing outside like they did when we were young, natural sunlight. They're on iPads at home, they're on iPads at school, and our eyes weren't meant to look up close like that, and that's creating more nearsightedness. The low hanging fruit is the adult myopic patients. They don't want their kids to be a -6 like they had, or don't want to have LASIK like they had and couldn't see the clock in the morning. But when it comes to myopia management, and we are using myopia management more because of the different soft lens options, the ortho K options, the atropine. But it's very interesting, and I've learned that you never should prejudge your patients, right? Like there's this lots and lots of patients. The husband and wife, the parents, always take their prescriptions, right? We try our best to save the sale. They're always going to ABC online getting eyeglasses every year, right? We've not try not to pre-appoint them because we don't tie up our time, but regardless, whatever. But when it comes to their kids being at a disadvantage from learning possibly, or having a disease, or a way to help their kids not be myopic, or things to be proactive. I mean, a lot of these parents, these learning centers, these Sylvan learning centers, the Kumans, they're all over the place, right? Mathnasiums. Everybody wants your kid to be at or above where they should be in terms of academic status, or whatever their aptitude
Sure.
is. And so when you relate this to affecting learning, affecting sports performance, affecting their lifestyle, they will always, not more than not, their pain point is their children's success, especially with some of these first generation kids that are here, Americanized citizens, and they will pay the 3,000 for whatever the case is for the ortho K or myopia management. It's really interesting, but they also want data, right? They also patients like to hear that other patients, what their other patients' experiences are. They don't
Hmm.
want to say, oh, they're not on an island. This is the first time I've heard about this. It is, which is mind-boggling to me, because it's upsetting that some of these kids come in here and it's like, oh my God, they're -7, and they, 10-year-old, it's terrible. They could have been avoided. But when you're presenting something new that isn't so new, but they first time they heard it, they want data, they want studies, and so we're able to have a digital marketing solution where they QR code something in the office, they get the studies, and again, we put them in an auto drip campaign to follow up with them, and so it really gives affirmation to what we're talking about the exam. It's not hocus pocus. We're talking about this magic fairy dust to get rid of their kids' myopia. There's studies behind it, and the reasoning behind it, and so that's the buy-in from the patients,
Yeah.
psychology of the parents.
So, and I want to come back to 2 points that you made, and I want to go to this sales cycle one first. Is it doesn't sound like patients necessarily make the decision on the spot every single time.
Mostly not. Yeah.
Okay, so different than dry eye, because dry eye you kind of get the buy-in pretty quickly, and you get them to take care of themselves. But how long does it typically take before you between when you first present it in the exam room to when a patient begins treatment?
I try my best, because all the parent knows, Eugene, is that, oh, my kids complain they can't see the board. They have no idea the kid went from a -1 to -3. They don't have a phoropter at home, right? So I try to really sit down with the parents at the comp exam, talk to them about it, and I at least want to schedule a training appointment with our staff to make sure the kids can do it ahead of time. Whether it's a soft contact lens solution or an ortho K solution, I will schedule that. So I will try my best for them to schedule something during, hey, winter break is a great time. Let's bring in Susie during winter break to train it. She doesn't have to wake up for the bus at 7 a.m. So I try to get the appointments, because I tell the patient, I'm not having you pay for anything up front unless we can make sure
Mhm.
that, little Mary can get her contacts in. And so that gives the patients, the parents, they don't want to spend all this money and then all of a sudden they can't put the contacts in. So we do the
So this
training
is
with
kind
them.
of another brilliant move. Like, this is another brilliant human psychology ninja move. It's called the foot in the door technique. But you're giving them a freebie Is this right? Like you're not charging for
No, I
this
don't
thing?
charge for it. We do the training as a freebie, because now look, if people come in looking for an ortho care myopia consultation because they're coming in for that, we do want to charge. We charge a few $100s
Yeah,
for
of
that
course.
appointment, but that easily gets applied to their treatment, right? Because they're still
Sure.
taking the staff time, the doctor's time, and stuff. But that gets applied to their treatment. I know there should be no free consultations, right? But
But
they got to have something wet. But the foot in the door, yeah. And the cool thing is as long as we pick a lens, the staff gives a lens that's, we get their Ks and their measurements, this quasi close, the kid can be like, oh my God, I can see the TV in your exam room down the hallway without even having glasses on. I mean, the kids always smile ear to ear. And what we usually do is we put a little comfort drop in their eye to make it a little less freak out. Some of these kids are super sensitive. So,
mhm.
but yeah, so we do that, the foot in the door, and then the parents can see they do it. And I said, look, our staff is fantastic. We've never had a patient not be able to get them in. So it gives them the assuredness that they can do it.
So then you do the training
Mhm.
and then talk to me about the process from, okay, so now I mean, what kind of patient, or what kind of parent, and I know as a father of a 9-year-old girl,
Yeah.
what kind of parent would be the negligent jerk who says, well, you know what, honey, you're going to have to take that out and you can never have that again. I want you to be half blind again.
Right.
Let's go with that.
Then if that's the case, what we'll do is we'll get your kid glasses today and we'll go in the optical, but I want to see them back for a complimentary 5-month follow-up. The reason being is the insurance gives us a 6-month prescription guarantee. So your prescription changes 6 months, we'll change the lens for free, which is another
Mm,
reason why value add, why you should buy your eyewear from us, right?
I
And
love that.
number two is because we always do 5 months because invariably they change this appointment. And if it's a lot of these labs and insurances, if it's like 6 months in a day, they give us a hard time. We can fight it, but it's just easier at 5 months. And then we recheck their prescription. Hey, you know what? Bob, your daughter's eyes changed by another 0.5 or 0.75. We really need to address this sooner than later before they
No,
become
I
really
love that.
bad. And then what I also
That's
do, it's really hard for patients who are emetropic or have no prescription to understand it. So what I'll do is I will take them in the waiting room and I will put a +2 over their eyes. This is how your daughter's seeing, which is a -2 in a prescription.
yeah,
This is
right.
how you're seeing. Really? I have no idea. This is how your daughter's walking away. Now, don't you feel bad? And that's how it kind of is. But because a lot of parents, the first time they got glass when they're 40 years old for readers, right? So,
Hmm.
by and large. So that kind
No,
of
it's
lets them.
so that this is brilliant. I mean, I think and one of the questions I want to ask, because obviously there's a little bit of a cycle, right? Like not every patient
Yeah,
accepts it. Um, and when you present the treatment plan, obviously some people go I have to talk to the other parent. I have
all the
to,
time.
think
Yeah.
about it, whatever. And so when they're thinking about it, you've got some solutions. You're sending them videos. You're sending them all kinds of things that help educate them more about their patient their kid's disease.
Yeah, and we follow up too. And if we haven't heard from them in a month or 6 weeks afterwards, our staff will reach out to them, just like any car salesman. Hey, Gene, you still thinking about that Honda? That type of thing where
Mhm.
it's just front of safe, top of mind, right?
Yeah. And what I love about you, Todd, is that you're not afraid to call it sales, because you're absolutely right. We're all business owners first, and we have to, because if we weren't in some way business owners, we wouldn't have patients to take care of.
Right.
Just some of us have better skills that we're honing, or are honing more skills as business owners, and some of us kind of have fewer skills that we're honing, and that as a result, there's certain things that we want to watch out for in our business. Now, going back to the myopia management component, what percentage of your patients accept treatment or go with a treatment plan?
I
Ultimately,
mean, I
not
mean, like
over.
I'm kind of an anomaly because when we talk about it, just my personal patients, I mean, I usually they're like slam dunk. They're getting the extra topographies done that day after the training, and I'm ordering lenses that day. But I'm kind of an anomaly when it comes to that. But I would probably say, I mean, I think relatively speaking, because of the cost and everything, I would say we're about 40-50% the day of the comp exam, and maybe we pick up another 20%, 25% like a month later, I would say. There's still those parents but we document it. We say, okay, I'm documenting because this kind of resonates with the parents too. I'm concerned about little Susie. I'm documenting in her chart that her prescription changed by this much, and we presented these options for you. So kind of put the onus on them too, and send them home
Mhm.
with information, things like that. But
Yeah, that's good. Um, by the way, with the pricing, have you found at all? I'm just curious on financing. Has that been a thing, whether for dry eye or myopia management? have you seen an increase in patients wanting to use
100.
financing like
Oh, not.
CareCredit or
I
anything?
mean, this year's been brutal. I mean, our annual supply contact lens rates is always north of 72, 74%. And we're like in the 60s. And I think a lot of it is because people are buying onesie twosies of boxes. And we've had a lot of patients, our long-term patients, you have to be careful with the financing because you don't want to get burned, right? You take 2 credit cards and you store them securely and all that kind of stuff. But we've had patients, I'm like, look, like this woman, but her daughter's getting married. I'm like, look, she's like, I can't do it. I said, I don't want you missing out on the $300 rebate. That is, $30 less per box or whatever the case may be. So let me just get your credit cards and we charge them monthly. So 100% to your point, I've never seen more of it. And I've been in practice since 2001. So I have my own practice for 18 years. I've never seen more of it than we've seen this year.
Hmm. Well, interesting.
Yeah.
And that's probably true for the higher ticket sales too.
100%. I mean, when it comes to the dry eye packages, we have patients that are literally like, if we give them a prompt pay discount, this is the price a la carte, this is the price all at once, this is the price over payments, and they're like, I don't understand the mindset, but it's all about cash flow management for them and different credit card billing cycles. And
Hmm.
most of the country, unfortunately, what was it, Eugene? They got hit with a $2,000 medical bill; they couldn't even pay it or something like that. It's
Yep.
pretty pathetic, and so really sad that people don't have the savings for those types of rainy day situations. And so, when it comes to those things, I mean, they're paying me like $200 to $300 more for the uh, treatments because they're not getting a discount because they want to spread out over payments. Also, something to that which we've instituted because this ophthalmologist was doing it. The ophthalmologist was saying, "Oh, it's this price if the technicians do LipiFlow, and it's an extra $300 if I do it." It's the same treatment. LipiFlow is so easy to do, and people are like, "Oh, I want you to do it." I mean, it's not like magic sauce here. Anybody can do it once you're trained by Johnson Johnson, for example. But we started doing it with the IPLs, and we had 3 patients this past week that my associate, they paid her more to do the IPL, and our staff's done hundreds and thousands of treatments. But the patient's inherent value feels if a doctor's doing it, and so what the heck, why not, right? So
Yeah, right. Like that's a freaking great technique too to increase revenue per patient. Even though I think what most patients probably don't realize is that since the doctor is doing few of them, they may not actually be the best person to do that treatment.
oh yeah, I'm like, they're like, you don't do it. I'm like, I barely know how to turn the machine on. I mean, our staff is so well trained, and that's not my good use of time. But in that doctor, I mean, that doctor, our associate, is doing them herself. She's generating revenue, and it literally takes her 5 to 7 minutes. While she can be doing it while a comp exam's being worked up anyway. But we do have certain dry eye days, so the schedule is that way, so our staff gets in that mindset, and they try to create continuity of care. So if Mary Jane always gets treated by Michelle, then Michelle's always that person because they schmooze in the back and they talk about stuff and they build that rapport. So they try to like keep the same treatment
Yeah, Todd,
technician.
I love this conversation. I feel like we could probably peel back more and more layers in future episodes as well.
Mhm.
I think this gave people enough value to start thinking about how do you treat your entire patient flow as a potential revenue generating entity at every single step? And also, how do you maximize the patient benefit? I mean, really, this is what you're talking about is maximize the patient benefit, maximize the value to the patient, but also get paid for doing it. As a final thought, any final thoughts of anything that we didn't cover? I know you're full of analogies, you're full of golden nuggets, as I like to call them. Anything else you want to share with the audience for today?
I mean, always and I credit my original study group from 15 years ago that we took together. It's like smarter, not harder, right? Invest in technology, have an implementation plan. The rewards will follow. Train your staff, get your staff buy-in, and really, choose the path you want to. I mean, optometry gets a knock on a lot of pessimists on some of the Facebook groups and things like that. But really, I mean, look, you can decommoditize your practice, especially in financially economical trying times these days, and keep doing what you love, what you're passionate about, and your practice will continue to thrive.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Todd, for joining us on the Power Hour today. Fantastic conversation. Glad to have you on the show.
Thank you. My pleasure.
If you're enjoying the Power Hour, you might be asking yourself, what can I do today in my practice that's going to make an impact? So, over the years, the practice coaches and consultants at the Power Practice have helped thousands of practices improve. And they often start with one thing, and that's a proprietary methodology called the Practice Profitability Audit. For about $2,400, they look at all of your practice numbers and they stack them up against where a practice of your size could and should be. It takes about a week for them to do. And because they're so experienced, they know what your potential looks like. And they're often able to take that $2,400, multiply it several times over, and hand it right back to you in found profits in your practice in months, not years, in months. But you get to keep the much more profitable practice for years afterwards. But here's the best news. I'm going to tell you how you can have the practice profitability audit completely free. See, we're really trying to get people onto the show website, which is, by the way, powerpractice.com. And then you click the Power Hour podcast button. The reason we want you there is because I want the audience participation. I want to hear your feedback and I want to know how to make the show better for you. So you can interact with us, send us your feedback, offer your suggestions. And for a limited time, when you go there, you can also request a practice profitability audit for free. Right. We're going to cover 100% of the cost, but only for 5 people per month. And 5 people per month is all we really have capacity for because this is a resource intensive audit and the power practice coaches are generally busy serving their clients. But for 5 people a month, they've agreed to cover 100% of the cost. So it's totally free to you. So again, take action immediately in your practice. Go to powerpractice.com, click on the Power Hour podcast, interact with us, but also request a practice profitability audit today.